Welcome. Terms like rules of the game, customs, ethos, atmosphere, tone, philosophy, ideology, and climate are often used to describe the unique characteristics of a school or organization. Essentially, organizational climate and culture are abstractions used to describe forces that shape our perceptions of organizations, influence how work is done, and the nature of leadership. Culture refers to solutions to internal and external problems that are passed on to new members as the correct way to perceive, think about, and solve problems. In sum, culture is the shared norms, values, and beliefs of organizational members. In other words, how we do things around here. Climate, on the other hand, refers to perceptions of individuals of the total environment of the organization that is composed of 4 dimensions, including ecology, milieu, the social system, including organizational administrative structures, and the culture that are dynamically interactive within the organization. In other words, what things are like around here. Let's briefly review research on organizational culture. We know that the Western Electric studies provide insight into the influence of management practices on group productivity and stimulated thinking about effective management styles. Organizational culture is not a new idea. Both Arnold and Barnard use this concept of organizations to capture a deeper meaning of work and how it served as a powerful force in everyday life. 2 decades later, in 1957, Selznick's research on the Tennessee Valley Authority continued to expand our understanding of culture. However, it failed to capture the full attention of organizational theorists. This changed dramatically with the publication of several books during the 1980s, including Weeche's book, Theory Z, that compared and contrasted management styles in American and Japanese organizations. It heightened attention to societal differences as well as assumptions of the human resource development HRD perspective that focuses on human relations. Peters and Waterman published In Search of Excellence in 1982 that underscored the power of values and culture in highly successful organizations. Culture is described as the glue that holds people together, stimulates a belief in a common mission, and galvanizes their energy and creativity. These values permeate the organization in the form of stories, myths, legends, and metaphors that support and reflect their basic beliefs. Deal and Kennedy's book, Corporate Cultures, The Rite and Rituals of Corporate Life, published in 1982, helped to clarify what culture is, how it works, and how leaders may nurture its development. In 1985, Schein published his seminal book, Organizational Culture and Leadership, that provides a framework for understanding the relationship between an organization's basic assumptions, its values, and how they may be reflected in observable artifacts. Today, culture occupies a powerful place in both academic and managerial discourse. What was once the soft part of organizational life is now viewed as core knowledge. There are several dimensions that are incorporated in the definition of culture that help us understand what it is and how it works. First, it encompasses a body of solutions. According to Schein, culture is a pattern of basic assumptions invented, discovered, or developed by a group as it learns to cope with problems of external adaptation and integration that has worked well enough to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to their problems. Bauer describes it as the way things are done around here. Second, assumptions. Over a long period of time, successful solutions become assumptions that have a deeper meaning and reflect how people in the organization think about the nature of reality, truth, human activity, and human relationships. Third, subliminal acceptance. Eventually, these assumptions are taken for granted and drop out of our awareness. Artifacts, including technology, observable behavior, as well as symbols, rituals, stories, and myths, provide insight into an organization's culture. Two major themes or components pervade descriptions of organizational cultures. First, norms. Norms are unwritten rules of behavior accepted as legitimate by the group that expresses their shared beliefs about what behavior is appropriate for members in good standing. Second, assumptions. Underneath these shared norms are assumptions about what people in the organization accept as true and what is false, that are unconsciously taken for granted and are rarely talked about or contested. Let's look at the manifestations of organizational culture. Although we know that culture reflects agreement among members of the organization on how to solve problems, these patterns of behavior tend to be unconscious and difficult for members to articulate. However, we may observe cultures through visible and audible artifacts, such as tools, buildings, art, and technology, as well as patterns of behavior. These are symbols of the culture itself. For example, mission statements, philosophies, and credos found in documents may help us understand the values and basic or unseen assumptions of an organization. Let's take a look at architecture. Modern high-rise buildings with granite, steel, and glass symbolize power. Office decor, walnut paneling, deep carpets, leather furniture symbolize wealth and power. Displays in high school entryways symbolize what's important to the school. We often see football trophies, student art, and awards. This figure depicts Shine's model of cultures that includes levels of culture, artifacts, values, and basic assumptions. An organization's culture arises over time and is shaped by intersecting and overlapping elements as depicted in the figure in the next slide. Traditions and rituals handed down as stories and myths convey the history of a particular school or district. They embody the values and beliefs of members and exert influence in establishing and maintaining behavioral norms. Creation stories about founding fathers project their greatness into the future and frame expectations for successive generations of students. Heroes and heroines are important in conveying culture as they embody what is important. They may include stories about hard-working teachers, exemplary principals, or innovative superintendents. Culture endures over generations, and each school or district is unique and is constantly in a stage of development. This provides an opportunity for leaders to influence the symbolic elements of the organization and thus influence its long-term trajectory. But cultures are enduring and resilient and thus may resist change. Consequently, leaders must be willing to take the time needed to influence members to adopt new norms, values, and beliefs. Organizations have cultures that reflect shared understandings, assumptions, and beliefs, but they also have subcultures that have their own distinct attributes. A good example of this is a school district that has a district office, high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools that may be distinctly different from each other. You may also see workplace subcultures that are distinctly different. For example, the Guidance and Counseling Office may encourage students to grow and mature in their ability to make informed decisions about their lives and value establishing trust relationships. On the other hand, the Attendance Office may value toughness, expect students to toe the line, and mete out punishment to transgressors. Yet both offices share the same general culture of the school. This may seem reasonable to some practitioners, but it is fundamentally incoherent to students and dysfunctional from a leadership perspective. Or you may have Theory X and Y administrators in the same school district. For example, a superintendent may be a top-down administrator, and a principal may prefer to work with and through others to accomplish their goals. Socialization refers to the process of interaction through which an individual, usually a novice, acquires the norms, values, beliefs, and attitudes and language characteristics of his or her group. In the course of acquiring these cultural elements, the individual's self and personality are created and shaped. There are three types of socialization, including anticipatory socialization, professional socialization, and organizational socialization. Anticipatory socialization involves an individual adopting and practicing beliefs, values, and attitudes of a group to which they desire to belong. Professional socialization in education generally begins in the pre-appointment phase of a school leader's education career and continues into the early post-appointment growth and development phase. Those who want to join the ranks of administrators consciously start to act and think like them and participate in quasi-administrative work, including volunteering for committees that are composed of school and district administrators. Professional socialization is defined as a process composed of a series of experiences which result in the internalization of a certain body of knowledge and skills, as well as identification with commitment to value, ethics, norms, and traditions of a profession. School and district administrators have qualities that are shared in the profession, as do teachers, doctors, and lawyers. Organizational socialization refers to the process by which one is taught and learns the ropes of one's particular organizational role in a specific organizational setting. Persons entering an organization are continually socialized in formal and informal ways. A major outcome of this socialization process is that the culture of the organization is transmitted to new members. Part of the culture of the organization involves folk wisdom and operating rules of thumb that persist over time that define, for example, ways of doing administration. Let's briefly look at the relationship between culture and leadership by thinking about several controversies. First, do leaders shape cultures or vice versa? Second, do organizations with strong cultures outperform those that don't have strong cultures? Third, do cohesive cultures result from organizational success or vice versa? And fourth, do cohesive cultures produce more if those cultural patterns fit the prevailing market? Let's briefly review what we've learned. What I'd like you to do is to discuss the notion of organizational culture and climate. Now, let's apply what you've learned about culture to your own organization. Discuss the links between organizational culture and effectiveness in your organization. Finally, apply what you know about culture to solving problems in your own organization. How would you influence or change the culture in your organization? I trust this review will underscore the importance of understanding culture for effective leadership.